Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock, so I want to call this special workshop to order. This is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022 at 10 a.m. in the Emergency Operations Center located at 401 Deputy Miller Drive in Granbury, Texas, for a special called workshop. And on the agenda, I want to call it to order. Normally we don't do this, start with an invocation, but I do have a request that we want to have a prayer before we start. So Ms. Sampson, if you want to. Please stand.
Dear Lord, as we gather today for this important business of the county, please be with the families in Uvalde, Texas, and what has happened there. Be with those families, the children. It's just incomprehensible what has happened there. Our hearts and our prayers go out to those families and all of the mothers and children around the world that have seen this horrific act. We know that Jesus Christ loves us and will be with us and protect us, and we ask that you be with those families today especially, but always. In your name we pray.
Amen. Okay, so the agenda item, what it says that we're here for today is we're having a special workshop to be held to provide an update on the status of the American Rescue Act funds that have been received by the county to date and that are expected to be received in the future and discuss any related issues. This meeting is open to the public. Citizens are encouraged to attend and ask questions. Please note that 2 or more members of the Commissioners Court may be in attendance, and we do have a quorum. However, this is only an informational session, and there'll be no action taken. So, I don't know how we want to do this, but I'll just start out with the first portion of it. It says that they give an update on the status of the Rescue Act funds that have been received. I see we have something here from Ms. Kidd. Handout. Do you want to speak on this, either one of Mrs. Kidd or Jay, on what we have done so far?
Okay, well, I took my spreadsheet and I Reader's digested it, and so these are the expenditures that have been completed, and then the purchases that are authorized. As you can see, everything that we have spent and we have budgeted totals, except for the 1 cent, which that's rounding, the amount we received, $5,986,715. We still have $3 million in capital outlay, but that's pretty much allocated for the radios. But it's called capital outlay because we have to budget it that way for fixed asset purposes.
Okay, open it up for discussion. If anybody wants to talk about the existing money and the way we've spent it for the county.
Well, I did have a question. I know that the radio system was kind of a estimate, for lack of a better word. Is that, am I wrong on that? Because I know that originally we had kind of put over $3.5 million or so, and because there were some costs that we knew we were going to encounter, but didn't know necessarily what they were at this point. Have we tightened that number up and gotten that?
So when we originally did it, conversation with the sheriff, and please correct me if I get some of our conversation wrong. Originally, we were looking at 1.5 to 2. Looking at the cost of things and things that we both could see that may occur, that's when I made the recommendation of let's do 3.5, just to be safe, so we didn't have to come back and start begging for extra money to cover it, that we would be able to cover it out of that. Since then, in an email that I sent y'all the other day after I did the report to the Treasury, we're roughly sitting on about 2.4 to 2.5 of what we've either expensed or what we know is coming. Some of the things that we're not completely sure on the total cost that I haven't added in is the 2 towers that are being replaced, rebuilt with the new buildings that have to be put in, the UPS units that they're requiring, and other top things. Since then, and this will be a different workshop, different conversation, is looking at what exactly does the fire departments need in this trunking system to make theirs work even better. We have done some expenditures on that for some radios already and some cradle points and stuff like that to make that side work a little bit better. But we just need to make sure, and that's going to be a deal where we're going to have to ask. I'm not sure we're going to have enough coverage to do that, so that's a different conversation. But as of right now, to truly answer your question, we're under the 3.5, but we're getting close to 3, and so we're going to be bumping that 3.5 by the time we get to the end of the project.
Okay, because I knew that, you know, the estimate on the radios coming up, that was on court yesterday, was 6.5, somewhere in that ballpark, and I didn't know how, you know, I knew there were things coming. I knew that we had, you know, unexpected things pop up, rusty tower, you know, these kind of things, and so.
Unanticipated.
Yeah, you like that, don't you?
I like that. It's my word. It's word of the day.
Yeah.
When I came to the court with the radio project, we had it down to the dollar for the Harris Company, and then there was stuff, the towers. Then the only thing that really wasn't 100% set in stone is, are you going to go with a new building or a used building? And what we have at, like, the two of the towers are just wooden sheds that are falling apart. So we've been needing to replace those for lots of years. So we are going with used buildings, so that helped the cost a little bit, but there were some different variables that that Harris, the radio company, wanted in there. So, but then after we got going along, then the fire department couldn't, like, as you know, going to the different meetings, that they didn't really want any part of that. So we put in place some other infrastructure, so we had 700 available for them. And then at the last minute, then they wanted to go with the trunking system. So that wasn't figured in last fall when I first brought it to the court. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and I knew it wasn't, but I just didn't know where we were on the budget right now, if that's something that we can look at working into there, even if it's not, doesn't all get in there, or how. I know that we had talked about, I guess it was the COVID money that we had talked about with the radios. So I'm just exploring options.
Right.
If we're,
And there is
you know,
some COVID money left.
yeah.
So,
May the public speak at this, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, I'd like to say something that is really important for not just this particular project, but for all projects, and that's looking at OPM, other people's money. We have a history here of spending county and city taxpayers' money on many things for which there is grant money available, mutual aid agreements available, and so forth. The Council of Governments, in speaking with them, is very clear that Hood County is sorely missing from many of the regular committees that meet monthly, where they trade marbles, where they exchange information about upcoming grants that are available. I realize we did not have a grant writer historically, and Mr. Walker can confirm, and I know we didn't have a grant writer. I have sent several grants forward that would have covered this, and
You mean Mr. Webster?
I'm sorry, Webster. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Webster. I'm sorry, and I have offered my services for free to write those grants. I've written many multi-million-dollar grants and gotten them, and also I score grants every year for the Department of Justice. A recent grant that was available last summer, which I scored for all over the country, people who submitted to the Department of Justice a grant, included target hardening equipment. So I'm looking at, how do we confirm what other resources have been exhausted? I'll give you an example, the mobile command post. I realize that's dead in the water. This is just an example. I wrote a grant for a mobile command post. It was way back in 2006 when the UASI money was flowing, so I'm not saying that there's UASI money now, Urban Area Security Initiative money, but by going to the Council of Governments regularly, being there to trade marbles, being there to vote on their mobile command post when it came time to vote on mine, their communication towers, their two-way radios when it came time to vote on mine, that's how you do it. You don't just show up like some nephew wanting money out of the blue when they never even say happy birthday. I'm just saying, you got to be there at the table regularly. to know what funds are coming, to vote for theirs. I understand we've shown up before and asked for things, but if we hadn't been there to vote on theirs, no, you're not gonna get it. So I'm really seeing this as across the board. Mobile command posts, first of all, you go to whoever's funding the old one and say, could you upgrade us before you do anything? Then you go to other counties that have one, whether it be Parker County or ERAF, I don't know exactly who has one anymore, and you ask for a mutual aid agreement. When we need it for a big one, we'll get it. When you need it for a big one, you'll get it, plus our human resources to go with it. So there are lots of other funds available that we don't seem to explore and exhaust before we hit the taxpayer's pocket. And I think that is a huge issue beyond two-way radios. But I'd like to just know for any of these things, what other resources were explored, drilled down, and exhausted before we hit the taxpayers up for the money? Because I've seen that. And by the way, that mobile command post, when I wrote ours for $750,000, the vehicle was only a small part of that. The bulk of that money was for the very expensive equipment that has to go with it, has to be maintained, has to be upgraded, and you have to teach, which costs a lot of money, people in how to use that. Plus mileage, the cost of storing it, the cost of repairing it, maintaining it. That wasn't put out for the public to consider. It was just $200,000 and we need to know today. So I know that's dead in the water, but that's an example of what needs to stop is how we do business. And I would thank you for considering that. And also, again, I've offered free grant writer resources till the cows come home and not been taken up on it. And I would never charge a penny to my own community, and I do get many, many, many thousands to write them and to score them around the country. So let's look at our human resources in the community as well.
Along that, I've been on from the time it was originated, the Regional Emergency Preparedness Planning Council. Jay is on that now. When I became an elected official, then I got on the Emergency Preparedness Planning Council and been on that ever since. So I go to all the meetings. The problem with a lot of things when it gets handed up from the Regional Emergency Preparedness Planning Council, there's 40-some members that vote on things before it comes.
Yeah.
And Hood County is a minority.
Yeah.
One year I was able to get some $5,000, I think, in UASI money back in 2005 or 2006.
Oh, yeah, I was here every REPAC meeting back then. We would have seen
Yeah.
each other, yeah.
But-
And it was flowing then. That's why I said the UASI money is no longer
Well,
flowing.
they wouldn't allow us to have that because we weren't an adjoining county with
Yeah.
Tarrant,
Yeah.
Dallas, or Cullen,
Yeah.
or Denver.
But the mutual aid agreements were right and left out of REPAC, and every REPAC meeting, you know, like our mobile command posts, they said last year we all voted for each other's mobile command posts. This year we're all voting for each other's communication towers. But a lot of smaller communities did get it, so I don't know the parameters. I don't remember the exact meeting, but I was at almost every one of them. I was over emergency management for DISD in police and security in 2005, 2006. And we could not apply for money directly, but we could apply through the county. So that went through Dallas County, that request on permanent or on loan to the district. And we did get quite a few million in Go Kids, in bullhorns to warn kids at the portables, all those things by asking the county, we can't apply, but you can. And so they did give us quite a few things that didn't even have to be inventoried, two-way radios being among them. We were their needy family to get their old ones when they upgraded to new ones. You show up, you partner, and so that's how we got a lot of things. We could not apply directly, but on permanent loan to the district, we got two-way radios that year.
And we got radios
Yeah.
back in the day, and the CERT stuff,
Yeah.
it's all come from.
But there's still other grant money, the Department of Justice money, and I just scored those grants last summer, about a dozen of them from around the country. A lot of them were police departments and fire departments. It was part of the school safety, but because it doesn't have to only be used at the school, if it's available, there were quite a few radios, equipment, really high-tech drones. Everybody wanted the drones. I approved quite a few of those, and so did everybody. And so cities and counties got the benefit of it being for schools in those cities and counties. So I'm just saying, there are creative ways that those monies are available, and I would love for someone to really drill down. And I've stopped sending every grant forward because nothing came of it, but I get them all the time. Yes.
I I don't know, about how long does it take when you submit a grant, roughly?
Oh,
I know
okay.
that
Here- That's a very good question. Here's the thing with grants, you have to really be ready ahead of time. And what we learned is, you don't wait for a grant RFP to come out. You actually help inform what needs to come out, and you're ready for it when it comes out. You know your needs, you've documented, like with mobile command posts. We have a hazard analysis for the county. We don't have to have had a tornado, although we had a lethal one in 2013. You just show we too are in Tornado Alley. We are in a floodplain. We're close to the nuclear power plant. We have, you show your human hazards, your technological hazards, your natural hazards that we have well documented, and show your need way ahead of time. So that grant is already kind of ready to roll in terms of why you need it, what it's for, historically when it would have done a lot of good, the impact of not funding it, all of that's ready to roll. So when the RFP comes out, you know it's coming out, and you have a short turnaround time, usually just sometimes just a few weeks, but ideally a few months to get it written. And then we score them and turn it in, and around the country there are several of us who score them and do a consensus call to see who gets the money and why. And we really look at that in detail. And so, yeah, you kind of have to, you don't have a lot of time, but you need to know before you need to know that you need stuff. Yes.
Oh, I have, this may be a silly question, but I mean, as far as helping our first responders,
Uh-huh.
taking better care of our first responders, are there grants available for them as well
Yes.
to take care of such
Now, the
things?
ones I'm more familiar with, the Department of Justice grants that I typically score are for schools. But like I say, the people applying for those around the country were often municipal and law enforcement. That's who, in most schools, even, I know we had this horrible incident yesterday, and they're saying every school should have a resource officer. Try finding them. I was over at the Texas School Safety Center. We were funded through Homeland Security and the legislature to oversee every public school in Texas. And we trained resource officers that ICJS was under me, the Governor's Institute for Criminal Justice Studies. So we trained about 2,000 a year law enforcement, we being my staff. I did only a little bit of that, but the training, we could never find enough resource officers. And typically you put them in a high school. It's unusual for every elementary school to have one, and they're acting like we need them. Try finding them, try getting them trained. And so that's a real challenge, but yes, typically municipal law enforcement, and we had counties like, jurisdictions like Harold ISD, they were the first to ever be packing before we passed the school marshal law. Nearest law enforcement on a good day is an hour away up there, and the next county over, and same thing with, there was several East Texas towns that were the first to take advantage of that school marshal bill, and they voted unanimously to have it because the nearest law enforcement on a good day is an hour away. So that's why I'm saying it depends, on who gets to apply, even if it's for a school. But there are other grants available, and I do get those and can forward them if y'all are interested. I just think my whole issue is let's stop using taxpayer money for things where there might be other opportunities to fund it, and two-way radios just came to mind as one of those many features.
I'm sorry, a couple more questions.
Uh-huh.
To understand the grant writing process. So I assume it would be a team of people that would sit down and write the grants. I mean, that's how it was in education.
Yes.
You put together a team of people writing for the grant. And then who is it that in the county would be the person to say, yeah, let's go forward with this grant process? Let's ask for the grant. Like, who are we funneling the permission to do that through?
Permission to write the grant? Well, it would be through, typically, if it's for emergency management, it would be through Jay Webster and his department, but not always. It would depend on the grant of who is the receiving body.
Give us permission.
Who would be receiving it is who gives permission, if you will, to write it. But it's not always a team. When I say team, a team of two can get her done.
Yeah.
Better than 10.
So I guess my question would be for Mr. Webster, whether he would object to grant writing for things like this.
Well, we have a grant writer now, don't we, Mr. Webster?
No, we do
I
not.
thought we hired somebody.
No, we have an emergency management planner to keep us, trying to help get us caught up and get us in compliance to be able to qualify for anything that we ask for. And so we're still working on trying to get those things done, along with everything else we're trying to get done, to get back in compliance, to make sure that we can stay where we can get the Treasury Act funds and we can get those CARES Act funds and we can qualify to get any other grants that we may ask for. I want to clarify some things that I'm part of the COG, been part of the COG for years. I sit on 3 committees right now. I sit on the REM, which is the Regional Emergency Management Group, who make recommendations and send it to the REPAC group on what gets funded and what does, or what we would like to have funded and what not to fund. I can tell you, sitting in those meetings with everybody that sits in the Metroplex, they take care of each other. They look at each other's SWAT teams, they look at each other's tactical teams, they don't look at us. When we vote on stuff, they don't vote to help us because we don't touch the Metroplex. They don't really, even though we pay our dues and we're part of it, they don't look at us to help us. They look at each other to help each other. So those grants and all that money that's supposed to be there is not, to the point that the sheltering grants that we used to get to put in shelters in people's houses, that went away. They said it wasn't worth the time and effort to oversee that grant, so they took that grant completely away from everybody. So the phone calls I get today going, hey, can you help me put in a shelter in my house, is no, we cannot, because the COG did away with that.
Yeah,
So those grants are not as easy to get from the COG as she wants to make it out to be, and I'm not trying to be rude to her, but it's not. I sit in there, and the sheriff sits in there every time we have these votes. We get outvoted.
Here's the thing, relationship building is a key, and I know you're doing that. Kip Marshall's one of my best friends, because we went to REPAC together from '05 on. You know Kip Marshall, she's the...
I do.
Okay, so because they have a lot of resources and we abut Parker County, that relationship building becomes a real key, and I know she's pretty good at getting those grants, and she's just up the road from us away. I'm not saying you haven't tried, and I realize that resources here are so limited in writing them. But like I say, the way we got authorization, if you will, to pursue it was by taking our Dallas County EMC to lunch a few times and asking, would you apply for it on permanent loan to the district? And it took a lot of that schmoozing and hanging out at the conferences to get that. But it's a lot of it is that, and a lot of it is just persistence. But as far as ignoring the smaller counties, I mean, I haven't been going to REPAC obviously in some years. I was at the state level, and there are state level grants and federal level grants, the DOJ grants. So it's not just REPAC. When I was saying we don't show up, I didn't mean y'all. I was thinking of I talked to Edith Marvin, who's over their environmental committee. And they have a lot of wastewater and water groups that meet, and she said, we don't see Hood County here. And this was like a little over a year ago. We may be there now, but we weren't then. And she said, I realize y'all are a long way away, but we got Sherman coming to Arlington, and we got, Fayette, Texas coming to Arlington, and they're a long way away. So we were sorely missing in that arena. But I don't mean to criticize if y'all are active now. That's wonderful.
So to answer your question is, no, I'm not opposed to getting grants. I've been talking to the commissioners about ways that we can either get somebody, hire somebody to do something. I'm not been ignoring it. It's just, I can only juggle so many balls. And so no, to answer your question on the shorter term is no. I've been having conversation with these guys. I've had conversation with every one of them about getting somebody to help us in that capacity.
Yeah, and we talked a year
question
ago.
on that topic for you, because you said something about being out of compliance, and I was wondering what we're out of compliance in and how long we've been out of compliance. I'm a little confused about that because I don't really know what we're.
Yeah, I don't either.
You see that bookshelf right there of all those plans that are on the third and fourth shelf? Those are our emergency management plans that we're required to stay in compliance with. When I got here, they weren't exactly up to speed to where we needed to be. So now we're having to rewrite nearly every one of those. Also what came along is we're in the middle of the nuclear regulations of updating our FEMA and nuclear regulation sides because of the power plant, their 5-year update, which takes priority over what we have to do. Now rewriting those nuclear regulation plans that touch the MOP and Annex W also touch 4 other plans. So then we have to update those. Margaret just got through yesterday sending in the plans that are required to FEMA look at, that they're gonna come in here in June and July of this year and grade us on through the graded, the exercise drill and the graded exercise that we're required to do that we put on hold due to COVID. We also have a decontamination drill that we have to do, which is an 8-year deal. It's our 8-year window for that. So we are having to update and rewrite that plan to get it into compliance. And so what that means is when you're not fully in compliance with the plans that the state of Texas requires you to be in, it affects money and things that you get. Now the good news is we're not bad out of compliance, which keeps us where we need to be, because they also know that we're in the process of working and doing our due diligence to update those. But when I pull a plan out and it says you will contact Southwestern Bell Telephone,
Oh, yeah, old school.
that hasn't existed since 2007. So that becomes a problem. So those are the things that I'm talking about, is if they had continued going in the direction they were going, that would have impacted any ability to keep the Treasury Act money, any ability to keep the CARES Act money, or any ability to apply for money that we may get to from the commissioners in the future.
And Mr. Webster, you inherited a hot mess. You inherited a hot
Yeah, I was gonna
mess.
ask, who was in charge of this before you were brought on to write it?
No,
County judge.
The county judge.
it was a mess. It was a mess, and to your credit, you're doing a good job of updating it. And I'll have to say, around the country, many jurisdictions do not do what they're supposed to do, review them annually, at a minimum of annually, and update them. They're living documents after every drill, after every real world event. That is so challenging when you're a one-man show. So you have done an
Oh,
excellent
just to make it
job.
clear, the county judge is still the guy in the hot seat.
Oh, yes,
He uses him, but it is the county judge that deals with emergency management.
Yes.
If we didn't have him, it would be on the county judge.
No, I know, but the county judge probably didn't write these or
No.
update them annually as
No.
required.
But he's on the hook to make sure it gets done.
Yeah.
So-
That's why we've
Yeah.
got Jay.
What I want to do is, just so y'all know, is these guys up here, this court, to thank them, because if I didn't have Margaret sitting back there helping me do that every day, that's all she does is work, and she's sitting in that window right there.
Oh, yeah.
If she wasn't sitting in there handling, writing those plans and working on what I had started when I walked in the door,
Yeah.
because of everything else I'm having to do, that would be falling through the crack.
Well, the first thing we need to do is get you help, it sounds like, so that we can get in compliance and get more money. Like any money that goes toward getting you help would be more than reimbursed by getting grants, I would think. I don't know.
We did have grant writes, we had a grant writing group come in, give a presentation. I think it was billed something like $300,000, and they would do our grant writing.
Exactly, that's crazy. Like I say, I was
Well,
offering to do it
that
for
was-
free,
I think it
but I
was
don't have this bandwidth.
It
Was it closer to 700,000?
Well, it was 700,000, if I'm correct,
Yeah.
Commissioner Andrews, to oversee our treasury
Yes.
money and help us write
We'll get a
grants.
few other bids, because that is a little bit.
That's a little bit high.
Yeah, but you do have free resources as well. I would talk to Kid about, some of the local people that might be willing to help, especially because we depend on their county, they depend on us in an emergency. So it may be exploring those relationships a little bit more might help. But this is not easy to do. Yes.
I don't understand why you would hire a grant writer when we have a free grant writer
Well,
that's willing to do it.
No, well, this year my bandwidth is small. This was last year I was sending a lot of grants and I
I
sent
don't
the one last
understand, why
summer.
are we not letting her write grants?
No,
And she's
I mean-
written, no, but I know you have.
Well, I've
all over
offered,
the
and
country.
I have the email still where I offered,
And so-
and one of them you said thank you, the others I didn't get a response
So why are we
at
not
all.
using
You're
our local
hired.
talent? for
No,
For
no.
nothing. You've agreed to hire for nothing, so we hire you for nothing.
I will send you, we're about to get the DOJ RFP for this year, I believe.
Just kidding, we can't make a decision here today.
Oh, no, I know it, no, and I'm not, I said I don't have the bandwidth this summer, I had it when I offered, but I can help look at them, and I am a lead instructor at FEMA Homeland Security in Emmitsburg, Maryland. That's our National Emergency Management
But give
Institute.
her a chance.
And this
I don't
is what we
understand
train, this is what we train people to do, so if you need me to look at something, I
Totally
can,
off the top.
here and there, but that's all, right now.
why. She's about the smartest woman I know.
Oh, thank you, Faye, no, and I don't know, and I don't know what you're dealing with firsthand at all, but I'm trying to throw you some compliments here. I know you took on a can of worms, and you're doing a good job given the limited resources you have. My whole thing is going forward, let's look at OPM, other people's money, whether it be grants, whether it be mutual aid agreements, whether it be, like I say, look at who was funding that thing before and see if they can upgrade it, and look at the true costs of operations, not just purchases, of maintenance of things. as
So
well.
we do have MOUs in place. We have MOUs in place all over the place. Parker County is one of our best partners. I talk to KIT all the time. I talk to their EM all the time. The problem is when you have, let's use fire season for an example.
Yeah,
When you have fire season and we're all under critical or extreme fire conditions, and you go, hey, can I borrow? It's no, because they're in the same boat we are. They have to worry about themselves, and so some of those resources through the MOUs that we have in place, and Commissioner Andrews can attest, being the ex-fire chief, that when you start asking for those resources, if they have their own problems or own needs, you're not getting it. And so some of the things that we look at is, I gotta be able to make sure that I can take care of us, and us is everybody who lives here.
yeah.
And so trying to depend on somebody else to give me something is sometimes a bad thing, because they're not gonna give it in the time of need when they have the same need. And so when we looked at certain things to have on hand, is to ensure that if one of the commissioners or somebody in the community needs that help, I have the capability of doing it, because we're way past the one-man band trying to take care of stuff with just a toothbrush. And I'm being kind of a smart butt, but you know what I'm saying? When I only have one little tool and I have to depend on others, and those others are going, no, that becomes the issue of what I'm trying to build, to make sure that if these gentlemen up front and lady, when she takes over, need me to take care of something, we have the resource here to do it first before I have to go beg, borrow, and steal to get somebody else to do it for us.
Well, there's a system for going up, and you know the system, and I understand what you're saying. When you have even one need beyond your capacity, whether it's one more person, one more vehicle, one more whatever, then what you have, you go on to the greater level, the DDC, the District Disaster Coordinator, and then you go to the state if local is exhausted. And we did that all the time. We're a state agency. I constantly got calls after a school shooting. You know, can you send us a mental health team? There was a stabbing at Spring High School in the hallway. 3,000 kids saw a kid die in that hallway, stabbed in the neck. It was tragic, and they said, we don't have mental health people Monday morning when we reopen for 3,000 kids. Can you send us a state team? And I did end up doing that, but I said, you don't seem to realize, and they didn't, you have a mutual aid agreement with all these other little towns nearby. And so they didn't know that. They didn't know that was already in place. So that Monday morning, all hands on deck from all those little towns were there. And so you go up to the state after you've gone to the district and after you've gone local. But I understand that.
So I understand the process, because I was the
Well,
DDC
I
chairman
figured
for nearly 10 years here.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the reason we had 12 aircraft to help Mike and them put that fire out was because of my relationship with the state of Texas. So I
Yes.
built those relationships,
Yes.
and they called me to go, what do you want us to send you? So that happens, and that exists.
Yeah.
But it doesn't exist every day, because
No.
once another fire started that was bigger than ours, those resources leave.
Yeah, it goes back.
And so that's what you need to understand. Yes, I can call people all day long and I can get whatever y'all want, but once the next biggest thing happens, they go take care of that.
I have a three-part question, please. And is the compliance issue, is that the only roadblock that keeps us from getting to grants?
We don't have any roadblocks right now with grants. If we were completely out of compliance, yes.
Okay.
We're not there because of the great work that girl in there's been doing since these guys allowed me to hire her.
Okay.
That got us out of the water and above water. So we
Okay.
don't have any compliance issues
So
that would
you're good
prevent
with
it.
that?
It
Okay.
could, if you didn't straighten it up or fix it.
So if the compliance issue is not a problem in getting grants, how can we break down roadblocks and red tape in getting grants easier?
One thing you have to know about them, and you don't always get all those memos, that's
I mean,
why
we
maybe you do. The ones I forwarded to you in the past, you may have already known about, the Department of Justice grants, the one last summer. I looked at who got it, and I thought, oh, we could have done better than this. The drones they got, this was all law enforcement for the schools, but it went to law enforcement, given that they might use it in the schools if there was an activity. So those, I don't know if you know about them, but I'd be happy to keep sending them.
So,
in other words, you
Commissioner
could be
Wilson has a
helping if they
complete
run into
list.
any problems, you would be able to help and get those grants for them,
Well,
right?
right now, I said I don't have the bandwidth this summer. I'm on 3 other boards that are pushing right now, but I can help in some ways right
That would
now.
be great.
In the past, I could have written them, and I may in the future, but this summer's out. But I'll send them to you when they come.
So he has a list of nearly 300 grants that we could get.
Yeah,
This office does not have the bandwidth to even sit down
and look at
and
it.
have conversations to look at.
Yeah, that's what I found, because I know when I'd send them, but one time I did talk to you and say, I'll write it if you want. I don't know if you knew who I was, or maybe you thought I wanted to get paid.
How can we fix that? Is there a fix for that, to get some help, to be able to get you to have someone read those grants and get the counties?
I think that question's directed up here.
Yeah, well, what about
That would
citizen committees? You've got resources of people in this town
Yeah.
who are retired Secret Service, who are retired federal and state employees who've probably written grants, scored grants.
Another grant writer that was in the
There you go, grant writer of pecan. We've got grant writers here. Why not solicit a committee of citizens?
I would like that idea, sure.
I just want to just speak on one thing. You talk about OPM, other people's money.
Yeah,
This court gets pressure all the time from the citizens of Hood County about grants and taking other people's money. And we're told it's not other people's money. There's strings attached. Maybe Commissioner Eagle's pretty good on this. Would you mind talking to Howard? We get in the court all the time about grants. We've turned down money because we know it's taxpayers' money. And just because it's not coming out of your pockets here, we've actually thought about even turning down the CARES Act, the ARPA money. We thought about it, we haven't done it, but we get pressure in the court. I can give you one instance where we turned down money. It was coming from a group that we thought were liberal. They were gonna give us money to help with our election administrator, and we turned it down because we knew it was other people's money. So we gotta be careful.
Oh, I know.
We gotta be careful that there are strings, there's no free money, is what we've been told.
sure,
We
that's
need to
true.
admit that. Watch out for the strings that are
True.
attached.
True.
So that comes to us, that we have to wade through that, of what stuff we can go for
Yeah,
grants that strings are not attached. The sheriff has some grants that he has to jump through hoops to get the little bit of money you get for one of your employees. And it's a grant, isn't it, the sheriff? And, we have to jump through some hoops
Oh, yeah.
sometimes, just to get that grant money, so
Yeah, the
Yeah.
there's no such thing as free money out there. I
no,
wanna
no.
make sure everybody
And
understands that.
and to your
They want a
point,
match, they want a match.
sometimes, not
And
all.
not all, but
sometimes.
some of the matches are expensive.
Sometimes they are, and not only that, sometimes the grant money doesn't outweigh your time and effort in having to manage the
Sure.
grant, turn in the reports that the grant requires. So I'm talking about bigger money, bigger millions,
Well, for example,
you know.
the
money.
sheriff has a victim coordinator grant.
Yeah, yeah.
The paperwork,
Oh, I know.
just to get this money
Full-time
is
person.
insane.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to do part of it, Mary Flores has to do part of it, the judge
Yeah.
has to do part of it, and it's $42,000. Yes, and we're going to do that.
Yeah.
We're gonna jump through these hoops, but it is ridiculous, and they change the parameters of it. Every time
I
there's a
know.
new person that's in charge of this particular grant, they go,
Yeah.
okay, well, we want this now. Let me tell you how bad it was. I capitalized VCLG, they told me that they couldn't read it that way, I had to change it.
Oh, I know, I've worked in
It's-
grantsmanship for years, and it's petty, and it's time consuming, and it's tedious, and it is often not worth it. The smaller grants are not worth it.
Well,
But
this
I'm-
one is small,
Yeah,
but we're going to do it, because that's $42,000.
yeah.
And the sheriff and I worked really well
Well,
on
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
get this one done.
Well, yeah, if you need it, you do it, and you have the people, but I'm talking about bigger grants, maybe that we're talking about millions here for some of these things, I think, and I don't know.
Do you realize the ones we already have, adult probation, juvenile probation?
I'm
victim
not familiar
coordinator?
with all the grants.
We have,
of
I do the grant
emergency.
reporting
Yeah,
monthly and quarterly.
yeah,
We have a large amount of money that comes from the state for juvenile probation, adult probation.
yeah,
They're supported like that. The Mary Flores, her money.
yeah.
There's other money. We get everything we can that I'm aware of.
Uh-huh.
So
Well-
it sounds like you really need some help and an individual who is dedicated to get relief to these people that need help funding and grants as far as sifting through them, going through the legal process and make sure there are no strings attached. I mean,
Well,
that's
they
what
need a
It
it
grant
sounds
writer.
like we use grants a lot, maybe not a lot comparatively,
Yeah.
but we do use them, so it's a process we're familiar with, and we have people
But it's
that
a pain
can,
in the butt.
yeah.
It's a
But-
pain in the butt, and you've got all these issues, and that's not right.
But I think that
It's
as
not
a
right.
conservative county, that would be, we would be beholden to look at places we could find money that,
But we need someone to do it.
Yeah.
right, that's what I'm
just
saying,
it.
I support that.
I don't have
No,
the
I mean,
manpower.
it has to be a dedicated person to help, to relieve, to take the pressure off.
Or volunteer people, like I said, I think you have retired
Does that make
citizens,
sense?
some of whom might be willing to, I don't know,
So,
I can't speak.
so
for
there's a
anybody.
difference in writing the grant,
And
because you gotta manage it on the back end.
Yes.
And the management on the back end is what takes all your bandwidth
It
to
does.
make sure you stay in compliance to keep the money that the grant gives you. If you don't do that, you're gonna lose it, and that's where the bandwidth comes in of needing the person other than just writing it.
Well, if the person doesn't have to be employed by the county, then I think it would be good to maybe put it out there to see if we could put together some people that would be willing to write
Have to be a
grants.
And that would be
You still
fine,
have to
but you,
And manage
just
the
keep in
back end
mind,
of it if they're allowed.
if it involves money, then you probably need to be a county employee.
And have to manage it, yeah.
Do you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
we've been
A
told-
liability on a
Which
private
is a Matt
citizen,
Mill.
no, I wouldn't wanna put that on
Okay.
anyone.
Yes, I understand.
And if it's in place and I do the grant reporting, fine, I'll figure it out, but the actual, I'm not a grant writer, don't ever wanna be a
I'm not
grant
smart enough
writer.
to know the strings,
Just,
but I just
if
feel
you
that
could see just what we
there's
do
gotta
on
be something in
juvenile alone,
writing
it
to
would blow
keep
your
you
mind,
protected.
the reporting we do on just juvenile.
Well, again, there are some grants that are worth it, some aren't, but the point was if we have
But then again,
300
who's gonna
grants,
oversee
somebody
it?
said, that we don't even have time to look at
Insurance
whether they
reporting
would
and all
make
of that.
sense to pursue.
Just like,
That's where a volunteer
this is just
committee
my
or
part.
somebody that's familiar, even former educators who
She's
are
doing
used to
all
looking at
FEMA
that kind of
recoveries.
thing can go,
Right.
That
here's
would be
one.
wonderful,
Here's
please
one.
bring them on.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you know what's up, bring them to the
So my
commissioners'
bandwidth
board
right now
meeting.
is so
Help them
short,
out.
but,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
Let's get back
could
to-
look at that in the future. But I was just saying, can we look at other people's
A life to
money
live.
to some extent for some of these things? Because I don't see us doing that as a city and a county to the extent that I wish we would. It's taxpayer money to the exclusion of really some other things. And there are good reasons for it, it sounds like. But I'm talking about going forward. Can we maybe be more resourceful and better stewards of taxpayers' money by at least ruling out and maybe documenting, here's why we ruled out these possible alternatives.
And I think that we just need to, I know that every one of us have mentioned it at times, but I think that maybe we need to look at bringing a grant writer on somewhere. And again, that's up here on us. I love
thought we
the idea,
had.
I love the idea of a
Typically,
committee
the-
or something looking at this saying, but yeah, I think we do need somebody, a county employee on the back end of this thing.
It should be a county
maintaining-
employee, not a
Maintaining
Yeah.
the compliance and everything, so.
Typically, how many of these grants you receive, these opportunities, are other government agencies that were gonna spend tax dollars, or how many were private corporations that we could get grants from?
We had both, I've done both, like, the ones that are private corporations are easier, I'll say that typically, it depends on the corporation, but not as big usually. You know, if you're talking federal, you're talking more strings and you're talking bigger and much more time consuming. What I found too, I wrote one right before I left the center and we got it for a couple of million and change. And my employees rebelled because getting another couple of million meant we could take on more tasks for school safety. They weren't gonna get a dime more salary, but they were gonna have to do $2 million more in work, and they didn't want it. So I got rebellion from my employees. We don't want the money. We'll have more work and not another dime. Anyway.
Well, I think-
You could use some of that grant money and get a little extra help.
Yeah,
But
we
I
did
think-
get-
I think that
question,
it's-
Going
yeah,
back to
that's-
the system, the radio systems in Trump, did I understand from Jay and the sheriff that you're okay now, that you have the funds you need to proceed with that? Or are you still, that you need additional funds? Are you all set with that?
Yes,
Okay.
we're working through that. Like I said, if we need additional funds, there's some projects that we know that we can move money from that that we don't need to really
Okay.
have that amount, so that there's not a need to come back and ask for somebody to, or, you know, them to pull money out of another fund to give us more money. No, we're working through the process, and we're gonna look really good when we get done.
Good, I'm glad.
Is that
Glad to
within
hear
the-
that.
When you say move money, are you saying within the ARPA fund?
Yes, ma'am. It's, I don't know if you have a copy
I
of,
do.
of the other deal, but it's within the
The
E1, the EC projects that are within the treasury. Yeah, that one.
I noticed that there was the last project, I don't know, on the report, before it starts with sub-receipts, there's a project called Hood County Jail Prevention in Congregate Settings. And it had 500,000 allocated, and to date, this was through March.
This one ended, yes, March 31st.
Through March had spent, 2,600, so, I mean, I don't know.
So I'll answer your question. When we get there, when we're actually, this is gonna be one of the things that we're gonna bring to court to ask y'all, or ask everybody permission to do. And the sheriff is very aware of this. I've had conversation with him. We put that money in there originally because we were using other money to pay for the medical expenses that were happening because of COVID. So we built that for the congregate, not knowing what that was gonna look like, because as we all know, the hospital can cost a lot. But yes, after looking at the slow amount that we've been spending and the good things that the sheriff's department's been doing, other things that we've been doing, keeping the vitamin flow going and other things, they've done a great job of keeping COVID under control and out of the jail. And so a recommendation that I would be bringing is to move some of that out of that project. Probably like to move it into the trunking project just to cover. That way I don't have to come back and say, hey, can I have some money out of check number 2 to cover it? I can just move it within the projects and do that.
And so,
And
does
that's a
the
typical type of process. that you
lawsuit
would
with the
want.
hospital also help with that
Yeah,
cost
you
if
did
the
a lot of
jail was,
things.
no? Okay, I just didn't.
I think going forward that the ruling there ends up where they are responsible for more of that. So I
was
think,
just trying to connect some dots there.
yeah,
That
I
was
don't
gonna
think we
help.
got a big win out of the cash side of it, but for future, they do have to take on more of that,
Okay, well, that's
that expense
okay.
for the rest of the contract.
So yes, you're tracking with one of the things that I've already looked at doing.
And then, can I ask a question about this report?
Could you speak up for that,
Yeah,
please?
so that, I see all the detail about where the money went, like, you know, to the Texas EMS and Ruth's Place and Biloxi. Are they giving you reports of how they use the money on a quarterly basis, or at
They give me a
some point?
report on the same time frame.
Okay,
I'll be straight up and honest with you, there's no report coming from the Senior Citizen Center yet because they have not spent any money. The CAC hasn't spent any money yet, they were waiting on Child Advocacy Center. They were waiting on to see what happened with the school bond, to figure out, they had a kind of a game plan as to what they were going to do if that would pass. And so they didn't pass, and now they're going back to another plan. But everybody else is giving me their reports on what they're spending it on. I'll tell you straight up, Mission Granbury and Pecan Valley are doing exactly what I was hoping they were going to do. The things that the overall game plan, or whatever you want to call it, that the Treasury wanted us to do, those 2 places are fulfilling those obligations of helping the lower income impacted community members in our community. They're doing a great job on helping with rental assistance, medical expenses, things that fall within those 21 categories that the government's looking at. So yes, they do. I have a spreadsheet that they provide that I give Becky a copy of that's in our master book she has for auditing purposes, as to actually where every dime that they spend goes. EMS, straight up front, is spending his on salaries within the salary group. He gave out bonuses with $56,000 in bonuses, and then increased his salary $2 a pop.
which one was that?
Texas EMS, to try to do that, keeping the workers instead of losing people. So that's how he spent his money.
So
As of last week, he's still down 4.
Yes.
Could that be
right
made
now.
public? That information on how the 300,000 and, you know, total 1.2 million, for the charities. Could that information be made public? So,
Every time I've been asked, I've been very freeful with where it goes and what it's been doing.
or is, without people having to ask, like just post it on the county website?
There's a link I thought that Drew had put up there that shows where the money's being spent.
Well, you've drilled down into where they're spending it.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
We wouldn't have that except when the documents get turned in.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's probably open records, that's where it's like a pass-through grant, so I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
Well, and I think that the answer to that is get with IT, and whenever these reports come in, if we could link some way to those reports off of a website.
All you gotta do is
just
ask
make
Mission
it-
Granbury and they'll give you a copy of their expenditures every day.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think anybody's trying to hide anything, it's
No.
just
I
the,
just
the
think
the
it's
availability,
easier.
the ease of access
Yeah,
to
making
it.
I
easier
just-
for the public, because a
yeah.
lot of people don't even know about it.
I just look at it as that's their information that they're sharing just to show me. At the end of the day, they're gonna be audited by the federal government as to how they spent the money. It's just an informational purpose back to me, so if we get asked, then we can say, yes, we know that they spent the money there. And so I'll be honest with you, that I looked at it, that's their report. If they wanna post it, I'll let them, and putting that information on our website never even crossed my mind. I'm making sure that we're posting what we were doing.
Mr. Webster, I have another quick question. You know, North Texas has now a really good program in emergency management where you can get a master's in being an emergency manager. And I know what we did was bring them on, some of the interns on to do a lot of the work, like helping write your annexes, because they want credit for it, they want the experience on their resume, and they were, again, OPM, free labor. There are some of those people getting their masters in emergency management. This is what they're learning to do, want to do, and you might want to contact them. I know it's a longer drive than what we had for them to come to Dallas, but when I left as police and security Chief Hodges, who took over my role, I said, why don't you, get with North Texas, that department? And he said, you mean you can get a degree in this? I'm like, yeah, they're up there. So you might want to look into universities and even grant writers from Tarleton, Weatherford, who might want to, who are professors. Professors tend to write a lot of grants and might be willing to, for a much lower fee than, what was it, 300,000? Look at that. I'm just saying, look at, we get.
So when the COG is offered up interns from North Texas or Tarleton, every answer has been no, I'm not driving there, it's too far.
It's too
And
far.
you can't offer me the experience that I can get going to work for free at Arlington or Colleyville or whatever because of their relationship with what they're doing. And so I have, all through COVID, when we needed help, when we were forced
Okay.
to do the documentation that we were required to turn into the state of Texas and the feds, we were fortunate that Doc Blocker got a nurse intern and a free nurse that the hospital paid for, or actually her doctor paid for her to sit in there and help us do that. But none of the interns from North Texas or Tarleton would come over and help us.
Well, keep trying, because it's personality driven. It's just that person that may live in Weatherford or may live here, or, especially the Tarleton folks. I mean, I wouldn't just give up, because, do you try consistently every semester? I mean, I'm just saying.
No, I don't, because I'm trying to keep what I do have to take care of
Okay.
up to speed
Okay,
and
well,
on top of those things.
Okay, so I have another question. So on this, it has the bookmobile at 82,000, but in here it says,
Annette, I'm recording up there. Can you speak up a little bit?
where's the?
It's on the
speak
front
up.
row.
So on this
Yeah, okay.
report, it has the bookmobile at 82,000, but in the report, it has 300,000. Is there something down here that ties with
So-
the rest of it?
They're not finished by
When
any
we
means.
ordered the bookmobile, we were required to give a 20% down payment. That's the $82,000.
Okay.
We still owe them a total, when the bill comes in, $287,000. The remaining of that money was moved to outfit the inside of the bus or the mobile library with books, DVDs, and so
Shelving.
the shelving and all of that.
Where is that in this bottom section?
It's in the top section, right underneath bookmobile. It says books and DVDs for the bookmobile.
No, I mean the balance of the,
It's, the
200
balance
something.
is still built into capital outlay.
Oh, okay, so that's, the capital outlay is the radio system and the bookmobile?
Yes,
Anything that has a.
because that's a moving target. I could
Inventory
say
items
we're
too,
going
right?
to spend 300,000 on
Inventory
the
item too.
bookmobile and everything that
Has to
goes
come
with
out of
it.
capital.
But everybody,
That's a lot
or at
around
least
here.
this young lady here knows, that's not gonna be the
I'm in my
same.
70s, you're so sweet, young lady.
But it's a moving target,
all this
and just
time
like with the radios and the components, you don't expect a tower, they go out there and they go, hey, we're going to have to replace this. So I'm leaving it in capital outlay because it's unknown.
Okay. that answers
Just,
my
it's just
question.
like on the report, and I don't know if one of the commissioners shared it with you since you're incoming. Like the 2.4 million that I put in their email, I included payments that I know that we're gonna owe Harris Radio in the future, because in the email and the stuff in the contract that the sheriff signed with them, it laid out our payment plan. So I went ahead and added all those payments in there just to show that that's encumbered in the future, just so the bookmobile, yeah, there's 300,000 sitting there total for it, but they only required us to give an $82,000 down payment, and then the rest is due upon delivery.
Okay, I was just trying to match the.
And then,
numbers
if-
up.
and when they call me, go, what about books? I honestly didn't even, it's kind of one of those deals, I'm ordering it, it should come with books, but you gotta buy them. So we had money left over, so we moved the rest of it to cover the books.
And you want to leave it stocked. You don't want to try to take the books out and go back in the library and put them on the shelves on the, no.
Yeah, that was
You want a fully
totally,
equipped bookmobile, and that's what the money's for. And we've had nothing but positive feedback on getting this thing going.
See, one of the things they're doing with the bookmobile is based on if they're going to an elementary school, or they're going to, in Toller or Lipan, Crescent, or going to different areas, they've got the carts where the books are gonna be programmable, if you will, for where they're going. If they're going to a retirement center, they'll have a different set of, they just roll out a whole cart, not just swapping books, they roll out a whole cart and then put it in for wherever they're going. And that's part of what they're doing with that.
and I didn't even, I'm serious, I didn't even think about building in money for books. Okay, I'm ordering a library, it's gonna come with the books. No, it doesn't come with the books, so that was on me.
We found some money.
I mean, you don't want primary books going to a retirement center. But, so that's where they're setting it up. That's what the way the design is on the interior of that vehicle.
Someone just sent me a text and a question to ask. Wonder how the county is going to meet the 2022 budget without a $12 million in rescue funds. Does somebody want to address that?
Rescue funds.
I will.
Okay.
We keep that money separate. It is for specific things. The only thing that you would have to honestly come up with in a couple of years is Jay's salary and his secretary's salary.
Margaret.
Margaret, I'm sorry, I'm calling her secretary, I didn't mean that. I like Margaret. Margaret's a sweet lady.
My planner.
The planner, there we go. That's budgeted in there because it's allowed. Part of my salary is budgeted in there because it's allowed. So that's the only thing you would have to come up with. This money is being used for stuff that we would have to borrow money for. So it's like a bonus and a windfall. We don't have to come up with it. And that's one of the reasons why we do not want to use this money to offset taxes. Where are you gonna get the money if you do that? You can't make that up. So the budget is whole and okay, period, and will be for the foreseeable future. It's one of the reasons we've been paying off debt. You pay debt off when you need to buy fire trucks, redo the jail, well, rebuild, refurbish the jail. You have enough property tax collected or a debt rate to support that. So this money has no bearing, basically, on future needs of this county. Does that help?
I think we've kind of worked over the grant writing enough. I don't want to cut anybody off, but, if there's other things we want to talk about, and I think on the list, what I see here is what are we going to do with the next $6 million?
Are you getting the next, are you
Yeah,
getting
we
another
need to,
6?
because we've already been an hour, and wasn't planning on this taking all day. But I don't want to cut anybody off either, but I think we've talked about grant writing enough. If we need to have a grant writing workshop, I'm totally in favor of that. Let's come here and talk about grant writing. So that could be something else that we can put up and take some time with the people that are interested in grant writing. So has anybody got any issues or anything you want to talk about? We haven't got the money yet. Jay might speak on that, what we think we're gonna get and when we're gonna get it. Jay?
So Friday, I received an email from the Treasury. They're doing it in waves. We were in the first wave, giving me instructions on what I needed to do into the system. So I logged into the system on Friday, went in, you had to verify all of your information, got on the phone with Leanne to ensure that, because I had to go back in and re-enter all the banking information. Got with her to help me re-enter all the banking information and verified all of that. Submitted our request for the second trench, and the email reply says that we'll receive it exactly 12 months from when we got our first check. So I went back and looked, and sometime between June 10th and June 15th, that check should hit the bank.
I got a question for you, if you could explain.
Try to.
So they've got since they first started this, we probably get an update and they change the rules every 3 weeks, right?
Pretty much.
And, but somewhere along the line, they've got they've talked about a revenue, replacement issue. And when I went to the Commissioners Conference back in October, they were basically advocating that don't pass that up, because even if you didn't technically lose revenue, you're able to add like a 6% or 7% inflation rate and get that back. And now we've got apparently a $10 million standard deduction, so to speak. Could you explain that to, because you're showing the new trench just under lost revenue, or revenue replacement, and would you explain to them, or explain what the definition of that is and what that means?
So they did. They opened it back. They when we first got the rules, you saw where it said you had to go in and do all of this mathematical stuff to prove that you lost money. Then as it kept going along, all of a sudden the standard deduction of up to $10 million appeared. And so I followed that as it rocked along, trying to understand, because I know Commissioner Andrews had some conversation with me after court one day about that. And of course, that's not my call. That's the auditor and the judge's call on what they want to do financially with you guys. And I didn't have enough information other than, we didn't lose anything. And so, and that's based on what Becky was telling me. As we got close to doing April 1st, I received a new book. Okay, it's time to do your update. Oh, here's your new book, April 1. So now I'm having to learn on the fly within my 30-day period to get my report done on what the changes were. I also found a instructional video that they also put out right after they put the book out. And then I use my resources to the people who have a good understanding to what's going on. And one of them was highly encouraged, hey, you need to really look at that, taking the standard deduction. And so they actually, the day that me and Becky were doing, I'd already watched the video, and in the video the guy talks about it. And he said in the video, this will be the last time you can pick it. If you don't pick it by April 30th or 31st, whatever it was, you lose out. They were going to take that off the table if you hadn't done it by this time frame. So I was explaining to her, showing her, Becky some things. One of my buddies that's in the middle of doing that, they were actually having a chat with the Treasury that day, and he sent me pictures and screenshots of questions that they were asking. And it was along the lines of one of the questions that Commissioner Andrews asked, and I think you had actually made comments about, is it's a standard deduction. You're not penalized, and it doesn't matter that you didn't lose revenue. That's not the problem. It has nothing to do with losing revenue. If you can claim up to a standard 10 million, you're just going to be required to spend, I think ours is 8.3 million that we would be required to spend on a project, and then the rest, or the other way around. Anyway, so I showed her what the conversation was, had conversation with the judge, and not to miss out on the deadline, I picked the button, and we selected that the second check would be shown as a standard deduction of lost revenue.
Okay, to the point there, what we've spent so far has followed the old guidelines as far as, you know, because we're still gonna have to follow those guidelines for the roughly $2 million or whatever.
Right.
But everything that we've spent in the first tranche, the 6 million or whatever, it all follows those guidelines.
Yes.
So even if they came back and said, well, you know, this part doesn't look like it really fits into our guidelines, and we can say, you know,
That's why
but
we
we
have
got
to.
$6 million worth.
That's why
of-
you have to be very diligent and make sure that your compliance reports follow the new things that they sent out the day before. It's just,
And
it's.
so that's why I explained in my email that you're looking at, some of the EC categories, because the first report had, you know, a different EC category. They made me change those. And so that's why those changed. And the better instructions for me to understand what to tell the two, to give me permission to do that, was understanding what you're asking me, the better understanding of the standard deduction, which in fact it was. You can claim it and you're good up to $10 million as long as the other money falls within the guidelines that you need to do.
And
if my understanding was incorrect, you know, help me out with this, but my understanding was, at least when I heard the information back in October, that bracket of lost revenue replacement, you could use that money for anything. Is that true?
It gives you more flexibility, like I said. The letter that I got May 16th from the Treasury, they highly are still encouraging 3 categories that they want you to expend money in. And I'll say the 3 categories and then follow that up with what I just said. They want you to continue to look at expanding the workforce or providing competitive wages to keep your workforce. Second thing is to expand access to affordable housing. Well, we never did that because I'm not gonna ask y'all to get into the housing business. That's a nightmare in itself, and we don't have people to do that. And in keeping our families and communities safe, which we're doing. We're upgrading our communication system so all first responders can have better communication to be able to better respond to stuff. And we're working through programs that others are doing for us. With that being said, it also opens up the door to have that greater flexibility. And I'm just gonna use this as an example. Commissioner Andrews wants to buy some fire truck to replace one. He could do that. If he wanted to do some remodeling on one of the fire stations, you could do that. It's still in the first responder category, which fits 1. But yes, you do have greater flexibility outside the rules, but yet they're highly encouraging staying within what the meaning was.
Yeah, the suggestions are just that, right?
Yeah.
Well, Commissioner Eagle, they put out a chart that you can enter information in to see if you actually lost revenue. So that's one of the first things I did. We didn't lose revenue. So we didn't need to, back in the beginning, we didn't need to utilize that. And I didn't want to because I didn't know if that would change. Because everything did change. Now you can do it a different way. So we stuck with no, we didn't lose any revenue because we didn't. And I feel like that is the most truthful and honest position to be in. You can take us.
That wasn't the question. I'm not worried about that.
Well, I am. I just wanted to know because it's been brought up, why didn't we do that? Well, you can't, if you don't lose revenue, why utilize that?
Well, but, okay, so to that point, my understanding of that was it didn't make any difference if you technically did not lose revenue.
It did in the
The point was you
beginning.
could add a 7% inflation factor, and that, you could claim that as a lost revenue.
Well,
Even though you didn't technically lose revenue, that's where this $10 million came in.
I
That's where the
understand, but
standard
way in the
deduction came.
beginning, everything was different. Everything evolved and changed every time you turned around.
No,
So,
I'm
it's
sure
just
there's
been-
35 videos out there.
At
And each
least.
one of them's got a different
At
spin
least.
on it.
And it was, and you, both of y'all are correct. When you listen to some of those videos, it was, you kind of got the impression you had to lose money, which
Yeah.
was a scary thought of, and
And
I'll
if-
just say, I didn't want to get into the business of saying something that we didn't have, and then that put y'all in a bad position. But then when it did change, you know, when we had our conversation, I really started going back and looking at it to see, and then yes, as you've stated, here's a new book, here's a new rule, here's a new video. When he actually talked about it in the video of, this is standard, he made it point clear, it's a standard deduction, there's no penalty, you don't have to prove X, Y, or Z, and if you don't do it by April 30th, you're gonna lose out. So I went to them, went to Becky and went to the judge and said, here's it is. I've got to make that decision in 3 days. What do y'all want to do? And I was able to kind of go into the system without submitting and showing them what it allows me to do in the system. And it does. It gives some greater flexibility for us, and it gives greater flexibility for y'all. And so I was given the go-ahead to push it to give that. So yes, basically the $6 million that's coming, roughly, has a lot more flexibility for us to have a lot more conversations of what is best for the community to do.
I really just wanted to know, in ignorance, we have to take this money, we've agreed to take this money, we need to take this money, what strings are attached to this net,
I think that as far as that goes, this money is gonna be spent. We're gonna get to write a check to the federal government out of our own pockets for this money. I think
Send it to us whether we like it or not.
I think it's a little bit, I think that we have to use this money.
we have to.
Or philosophically, not, we're not being made
No, I
to do
just know that's a
it. We're
community
paying for
question
it.
that I've seen
If
is,
we don't-
does the county have to take it, does the county need it?
I got it.
Where are we with that?
Let me, I'm gonna give her an example.
All right.
So let me answer that. No, we didn't. If I hadn't gone in and done my paperwork follow-up, they'd have never sent us check number 2. So the $6 million they would have kept and spent it as how they saw fit. So I'm gonna give you an example of a county that's real close to us that's wishing they hadn't have said no to the first check. Hamilton County would have gotten $3 million total. And since then, they've hired a new emergency management coordinator that is also their, what's she say her other title was?
Dispatch.
She basically, the sheriff over there decided he no longer wants the dispatch center as part of his sheriff office. So they are separating out emergency communications into a separate building. They also don't have an EOC. Well, if they'd have taken $3 million, that $1 million would have paid for their EOC, their move, and their upgrading their equipment. Instead, they gave it all back, and now they're having to foot that bill themselves to do the things that they're having to do. So that's the kind of situations you end up in. You wouldn't have been paying for my salary out of that money. We'd have had to put it in the budget. The Margaret's salary would have had to been taken out of the county budget. All of our expenses, and when I say all of our expenses, everything that's associated with my office and her, including our benefits, training, all of that is
Health
taken,
insurance.
is taking out of the treasury money to pay for us. A lot of the equipment that I now have was paid for out of the CARES Act money. It didn't come out of the county's local budget. I understand it's taxpayer money, but it didn't come out of us asking the Commissioners Court to add to the increase of the overall budget from local taxpayer money. So it's been paying for a lot of things that we haven't had to ask the community to do.
So going forward, will your salary and Margaret's salary have to be budgeted for out of our regular county budget, or are we gonna?
2025.
I highly recommend they use that money for their salaries through the end of the time you can, and then work it back into the budget. But that's just a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned.
So what happens now that it's all in this one tranche here, or one, I don't know, bucket, for lack of a better word, called revenue replacement? So there's other things, the capital projects or whatever that the money could be used for. Do you just, is this like a holding place, and then there'll be a decision made on how pieces of it get spent, or
So
how
the
does
decisions
where
of
do we go
how
from
it's
here?
spent will be up to y'all. How I report it will be up to what my next set of instructions are when I get them. I can't answer that until, because once I do a report, they lock the system down. They only allow you to do certain things. So they allowed me to go in, and so I had the availability on a short window of 2 weeks to go in and accept our second check. Once I did that, it locks the system back down. So I can't make any changes until 90 days from now when it's our turn again to make another report. Once they do that, I'm quite sure I'll get another book and I'll get another video to watch to be able to answer the questions of how I go forward in reporting the revenue replacement and where it's spent. I don't have an answer for you right now.
That's gonna be a court decision during budget time.
But as far as how the money's spent, that's all
You
of
got
these,
What is
something?
the process?
Yes, I have to go there. Using American Rescue Plan X for water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure projects, it's one of the most critical issues facing our community. After a hard rain like we've just had, there will be dookie in the streets, I'm just saying. And we have spent millions of taxpayer money going back to the 1990s, starting with the Hood County Regional Sewerage System Plan that came out in 2000, recommending that we have an area-wide
What was the
sewer.
cost of that one?
This one was an EPA grant, so it was a few million, but it's funded by, these
Oh,
are
just a few million?
funded by a grant, under 2 million. And so then we went forward, and the BRA says we spent 6 million on the watershed protection plan that was published in 2010, where it clearly says on page 105 that the city of Granbury is planning a 10 million gallon a day plant north of
So, just
Granbury.
back to it, so I've read that report.
Yeah,
So it's millions of dollars it would take for infrastructure, and then millions of dollars to operate it.
okay,
So what's the
So
total
what
on it?
this was doing is saying that we need a plan, and the ball was dropped, not by anyone here, I don't think, but going forward from when these were planned, nothing was carried forward in terms of continuity of government. When Anita and I met with our city manager in August of 2020 to point out the watershed protection plan.
So what do you think,
Never heard of
what do you
it.
think it would cost for that
Okay.
same regional plan
Okay,
today?
so here's the thing. Regional is a term that's more been replaced by area-wide. Our Council of Governments, if you look at the map, you have all these area-wide facilities all through our Council of Governments until it gets to Hood County, where the white is. So we don't have one, but it clearly says the Water Resources recommends regional water system providers provide new entities into the systems rather than operate independently areas of wastewater systems. These mom and pop 1.5 million gallon a day.
So who would be running, the
Okay,
county?
so, no, okay, let me answer that. So I've talked extensively for several years to Tiffany Moore-Gunn-Malson. She's the environmental director for the BRA. She said often the BRA will agree to run it if a county or city includes them in the initial planning, but they don't come in once one has been poorly planned, like the East
there's a
plant,
huge
and take
fee.
over once they start getting the 3,000 fines a day like they have in San Saba. They don't take over somebody's mess. So the BRA often runs it and operates it. What the Council of Government recommends, what TCEQ recommends, what's going on all over
I'm trying to match
state.
up what that does with the.
Okay, so the county, in the Hood County Development and Compliant Regulations, which I've read to y'all, and this is, I actually brought the 2018, the 2020, when it was updated, is exactly the same. This is Article 1, Section 1.2 of our Hood County Development Regulations on record, that the Hood County Development Permit contained in this says that the Hood County Commissioners Court, the purpose of this is to protect the watershed that drains into Hood County River from the ill effects, into the Brazos River, of ill effects of pollution and urbanization caused by uncontrolled development for the present and future residents of Hood County, and thereby for all citizens of the state using the lake and the river. It goes on to designate the Hood County Commissioners Court hereby makes the following findings. Section 1.5A, the Commissioners Court of Hood County has been delegated the authority to regulate the process of development pursuant to, but not limited to, the following Texas statutes. And one of those statutes is Texas Water Code, Chapters 16 and 26, Texas Health and Safety Code 121. This is all about the water. Down in Section G of 1.5, the Commissioners Court of Hood County has the authority and obligation to protect public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Hood County, and these regulations are necessary to effect such purposes. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically what we've got going on now is the tail wagging the dog. The 10,000 and change people, 10,000 plus people in the city limits and those who have the right to vote in city elections are wagging the tail of the dog, the 65,000 plus in the county, into what our future is about to look like. The city and county have to work together, y'all. I know there are tensions and old grievances and issues, but it's time for the county to step up, and obligation is the key word here that I read straight from this, and take some responsibility and some role and consider using at least a portion that can be used for the wastewater infrastructure. And here's what regional has some caveats, and I understand that more than we did in the beginning. Regional means everybody in the region has to sign on. Area-wide is just instead of doing a whole bunch of these mom and pops, you do one that will serve, you know, we have Crescent who's possibly willing to come on board. We have, you know, all these little jurisdictions in Hood County have their own sewer plant. Not only is the cost of building them a big issue, but the cost of every one of them has to have their own biomonitoring lab, every one of them has to have a level A operator. So for economy of scale for the county to work with BRA or whoever, there are other organizations that will take it over and run it. We can qualify for EPA grants for green incentives for other things other than taxpayer money for these big time if they're constructed, designed in a way that the east one was not. I sent every commissioner, I don't know if y'all read it, the recent OPIC decision from the hearing we had in February. First of all, only 2% of all people who protest sewer plants ever get granted a state Office of Administrative hearing. That hearing took place in March 7th through 9th, and against all odds, contrary to what the Hood County News quoted somebody as saying, OPIC, TCEQ's OPIC, Office of Public Interest Counsel at TCEQ, is there, and they attended that full hearing. They're attorneys, and their goal is to be impartial, not favoring the protestants and not favoring the applicant, the city. They don't favor anybody. They listen to all the testimonies, and they submit their closing arguments. I sent you their closing arguments. They're clear as a bell, and this is against all odds. They typically don't go against the TCEQ executive director. They are TCEQ, and they did. They sided with us, and I sent you that. I'm not going to read it all to you, but it clearly says, on this basis and this basis, this permit may be denied. It's up to the administrative judges, and January 21st, they'll issue their ruling. It doesn't end there. Both sides do a counter argument. It probably will go to the TCEQ Commissioners Court sometime next fall. Don't listen to all this, we're gonna know next summer. A lot of city council people campaigned by why look at an alternative. We'll know in February, meaning last February, we knew better and we said better. They either didn't understand the process or they swayed a lot of votes by spitting that garbage. So it's time for the county to look at the explosive growth that is coming. Yesterday I attended the Economic Impact Committee, and they talked about how Dr. Perryman, that they hired to do an economic impact study, said he was in Plano in 1980, he was in Frisco in the 1990s. Hello, Granbury. With what's going on now, this is you. They had predicted in 2018, the Economic Impact Committee, that we would have a 3% growth over the next 10 years, and 3% was extremely, it was 2 to 3%, they went with a higher number to make sure we had plans. It's 7% and climbing. So we're going to be Frisco, we're going to be Plano in a very short time, and it's time for the county to stop letting the tail wag the dog and get involved in one of the biggest issues facing our county. There is a good chance that permit will be denied based on OPIC's decision. You never know what the state's going to do, but if you read what I sent you, their decision ruled to not grant that permit, and the reason being what you have an obligation to do, commissioners, and that is to protect the health and public welfare of the water. By discharging 2 million gallons a day of effluent into a narrow, shallow creek, our backyard. We can't vote in the city, by the way, only in county elections. OPIC agreed. The attorneys at TCEQ listened to all sides and agreed. The one thing that the city's hydro engineer and our hydro engineer agreed on is that what they're putting in that creek does not meet state standards. The amount of phosphorus and nitrogen will kill the fish, likely to trigger algae, and I sent you their conclusion and why. So the odds are we're going to need a plan B real fast, and y'all need to get on board, and we could sure use some of this money toward that aim, which is a huge issue facing everybody in this community. It's not just our backyard, because they're building it just upstream if they get a permit, and I don't think they will, from the water supply, the water treatment plant. And with OPIC agreeing with us it's going to trigger algae, the odds of that having to be relocated or something else done is huge. The odds of a fish kill, according to OPIC and both sides hydro engineers. We had 250,000 fish killed when I lived here, when we moved here in 2013, that big fish kill.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think that we need to go a little higher level with this.
Okay, I'm just saying the county needs
You know,
to
that's a pretty,
Well, the
a
county
very
needs to get
definite,
involved
you know.
in this. It's, the county is saying not our problem. Everything your development rules and regulations say it
We
is.
have problems with that environment, we deal with it every day.
No,
It's-
the
it's
water.
it's
You're
called,
tasked with
We have
protecting.
aerobic system rules that we require people
Okay, it
to have
goes beyond
inspections on
this.
their aerobic system, so we don't contaminate our lake.
Sure, but
So
the okay, so this $6 million, according, was spent on the watershed protection plan, focused on cleaning up the aerobic systems, and the follow-on study said
Yeah.
that was done. That
Yeah.
has been done. We all.
Yes, and we don't want to lose that, do we?
No.
We
It's,
don't ever want to go back and not
well, I'm
have,
just saying, we've cleaned it up.
yeah.
This is 2 million gallons a day in a creek that the city's wanting to dump in a narrow,
Well,
shallow
that
creek.
hasn't happened yet.
They don't have a permit, but you got a plan before
Well,
it
here's,
gets
and,
denied.
you know, the county, the growth in the county is absolutely exploding, and no one is handling infrastructure for it, and this is a great opportunity to handle
I-
Oh,
that.
sorry.
There's too many people talking.
Yeah.
You know, and you're right, Kevin, you're talking a lot of details here, and
Yeah, I think that we need to be at a higher level. I think looking at the sewer plant is definitely an option that's on the table. I know Dave is all over that thing.
along with the fire
and that's,
department, the jail, the sewer plant.
Yeah, I
There's
mean,
a lot
you know,
of issues that control.
what-
And we gotta look at that.
Well, I represent about 1,000 citizens, not all of them came, but over 1,000 people, 450 public comments went on record opposing the city's proposed sewer plant. Unprecedented in the history of TCQ. Those were households, about 400 households. Most households had 2 or 3 people in them, so you're looking at about 1,000 people. And as anyone who's ever done a survey knows, for every 1,000 who took the time to figure out how to send in those comments, which was not easy, there are probably thousands more who were opposed and couldn't figure that out, especially our seniors and those who said, I don't know what the internet is. So,
And the same amount are going to give you the same comments on infrastructure and trying to get from my job to my home.
yes,
in
the
afternoon.
roads are an
We
issue.
have a huge problem there
Yeah.
too.
The
that we
roads
need
are an
to
issue,
address.
and the roads and the wastewater, if you'll look at any kind of reports and social media, are the citizens' biggest concern. So as the president of Granbury Fresh and on the board of Friends of the Brazos who's opposing this, I'm representing a lot of people and didn't want to drag them all here, but
Well, what we
basically.
don't have here today is we don't have the fire departments here representing them.
No, we don't.
We don't have them to,
But
you know,
a
give
lot
us
of us,
the-
a few thousand of us would love for the county to consider
We'll-
putting some of the money toward
we
wastewater, that's
will-
all I'm saying.
We will
I know
be
you're
listening
interrupting,
to all of that, I'm sure.
So what is the process gonna be
I'm sorry.
with this second tranche? We need to
That's what I'm
rush
trying to
to get that done.
All right, let's see if we can get down to one
did-
person at a time, please.
Okay, sure.
And just, all I wanted to say is, I guess what she's saying is that we have the option to use this money towards the wastewater plant, which I think
Okay.
the community would be interested in. My question is, I guess for Mr. Webster, well, 2. One, is any of this next group of money going to be allotted to help local businesses and charities the way the last one was? And when will we be publishing some kind of line item list of how this money is gonna be spent? Like when and where, when we make those decisions, cause,
I think that falls here, not over
Okay.
there. That's a decision for us to make, how that money gets spent.
Was the point
And
of
then-
today's workshop to come up with a?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was kinda, what we were looking at today is just kinda spitball. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know, just kinda come up, wastewater, absolutely, that's on the deal. That's something that we can look at.
Fire equipment.
well,
Yeah, we've got some fire,
but this is
fire
not for
stuff
local
and.
businesses and charities, this is
No.
gonna, no, because people are gonna wanna know about that.
I don't think so. I don't think that,
Again, that's up to the court.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it's-
There's 5 people on the court, that takes 3 to make a decision. So
Well, not a
that-
dime was spent on wastewater of the old money, and a lot of people wanted it, so we just want the citizens, and I think you had a comment that was,
No, my comment is we need a backup plan and it needs to be put into place quickly. I mean, how many apartment buildings, how many homes are built, not with septic systems, but need to be on
okay,
public
peacekeeper.
disposal, and they're not.
yeah.
So Jay,
And the other
Ma'am.
part-
Wait a minute, Katie, you had something?
yes, are you gonna submit a line item list to the commissioner's court or be a little transparent this time on where you plan on spending the money?
I was
You're
transparent
shaking your head
last
no.
time. I was transparent last time. I brought the spreadsheet to court and showed them exactly what I was suggesting, and that's how it was voted. However, they wanna do this second round of money is on them. I've already told all of them that. I am only gonna keep them inside the playing field to make sure that whatever they choose, it's not gonna get them in trouble. This is gonna be their decision. And whatever they ask me to do based on that decision is what I will do.
The bottom line is this, and correct me if I'm wrong. The other 50% of the money that we were allotted to begin with, that's coming in somewhere around June the 10th, we don't have to earmark every nickel of it right now and or
No.
placeholder it
Like we did before, no.
did before. And we can have more meetings like this, right?
Absolutely.
And people can bring in their,
Their
their
wish
pitches,
list.
their, however you wanna.
Campaign, put on the
Pitch
campaign.
is a good idea, pitch is it,
Yeah.
and we can sit down and we can talk about it, right?
Yeah.
How will you put that out to citizens? Because we only knew about this because Nanette posted in a comment on Facebook about it.
It was
We can
posted.
make you water, we can't make you drink, we put it on the website, we put it out there, it's out there for people. We don't have public meetings without posting it.
On the
You have to
website.
get involved and see what we.
Send that to
you
you.
know,
But I get all the
that's fine.
mailings from them, I'm on their
We don't
list,
do
and I
social
get every
media.
meeting.
Most
sent
You
to
do,
me.
we don't.
Well, you can ask to be
We
on
do
their
it the way
list,
that the
though.
law
It's
tells us to
easy.
do it. 72 hours notice, post it at the judge, we post it on the internet. Go to our website, that stuff is all there.
Yeah.
We can lead, we can't make you drink, we can lead you
Do you
there, but
realize
you
how
gotta
many
go on.
seniors don't have the internet, don't have a computer?
Well,
How
then it's posted at the.
hundreds of people
Go
in
So
back.
that
by
doesn't
this
even
don't
matter
take
because
the
people
hood
are
candy.
working right now. I had people contacting me saying can't do this, and so some of these workshops, again, like Commissioners Court should probably be held
We've been through
in
that
an
too.
evening.
And we,
Yeah, I mean,
and to be honest, we've tried that and
Yeah.
nobody
Nobody
shows
shows up.
up.
Try
I mean,
again.
it's
I mean, just
in the
try again.
newspaper.
The only thing I want to add, Commissioner, is just for being able to have research, is you need to talk to BRA and ask the city of Belton and the county of Taylor what BRA charges them to operate those facilities. It's not free.
No, it's not free, the city of
It's a
Temple.
big cost.
It's not free for you to operate it
No,
either.
absolutely not.
It's not
No,
free
not
for
us.
anybody to
Not us, it's you guys, it's paying, it's not us, it's your money.
No, I mean, it's not free for the
No.
taxpayers to operate it.
Right, Janet, you had something?
Yes, so, tailing on with what Dave was saying about having more meetings and figuring out how to, what the process will be to administer these funds. I understand that Judge Dean and Parker County put together a commission or a committee made up of community members and different people to review applications and help decide. I don't know if anybody's talked to Judge Dean about how they went about that, or how it's working, or maybe not working, but it's an idea that might want to be explored, because there will be, lots of people wanting to have input on how the money is spent, or have a pitch, or whatever, so maybe there's a scoring mechanism. You do scoring.
Well, yeah, I think a rubric or a survey or,
You wouldn't do anything to get that scoring to lean your way, would you?
oh, I don't want to do
Oh.
it. I'm just saying, what,
Just kidding, yeah.
focus groups, if each commissioner would find out what their constituents want by having focus groups, documenting, doing surveys, something other than come to meetings during working hours, if you come to our website and figure out we're having one. For people often who don't, like I say, a lot of ours didn't have a computer, didn't know what the internet was when we were trying to get our comments.
I just think there needs to be a better process than what happened last time. So
Did you have a question back there?
Oh, I've got a couple of questions. One comment is, we're talking about wastewater and the issues with waste and all this kind of stuff. Why is it that brand new subdivisions that are building their homes using aerobic system and wells?
Why? Because our regulations allow that. But there are restrictions. You have to have a certain size property to be able to have a well and to have an aerobic system. It's all under our regulations.
And you have to maintain them, or there's some pretty big
Well, I
fines.
know, but all this stuff, you've got the well and you've got all these
Well,
problems,
if there's no place to hook up for sewer system,
Yeah.
then I'm a choice. But we
Well,
don't
and I
have
think-
that infrastructure, and who's gonna build that infrastructure? The county? If that's what you want, you might spend it on that, spend it on
Some of
infrastructure.
the money
put more
can go
pipes
to
into
that.
the system.
And the cost of that would have to go on the developer, and it would make the development of the
that's what I
property
heard
so
too.
high that nobody would ever develop
Yeah.
anything. One of the good things about on-site sewage is it limits population density. If you don't have something limiting population density, you get low-income apartment complexes all over the place. So there's very much a positive to having a limitation on population density. Right? With wells and a septic system, the smallest you can build on in Hood County is 2 acres. So, and that's for, a single-family home. So,
How you
that's-
pay for a larger plant is often public-private partnerships, which includes not only developers coming in for wanting to build homes, and they pay, you start with a small plant, it could be 1 million gallon a day or 2 million, like the ones they're trying to build, but you put it on land, unlike the East plant, there's no more land for the one they're trying to build, where you can expand it over time as the city grows. The new developments, and not only new developments, there are a lot of businesses who depend on water for their business processing. They also often pay for that expansion, that gradual expansion into what we call an area-wide plant. Right now, we use our very precious drinking water to water our lawns, to wash our cars, to water the athletic field, all kinds of things that we don't need to water the city and county grounds. That's drinking water. It's expensive potable water. You can use beneficial reuse water in cities like Temple, Texas, Round Rock, Springtown, all over the state, which is rapidly losing its water as many millions of people come to Texas.
Is it Wichita Falls or Abilene, one's drinking theirs?
Well, in California, they're regulating how long your shower can run. That's our future here with our explosive growth, if we don't address it
And along
now.
those lines, it's my understanding that there is an area that's being developed with housing in Granbury. I can't remember exactly where it is, but the developer is going to pitch this as
Yes.
rentals only,
Oh, okay.
rentals.
Oh.
STR, short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals, yeah.
So we are going to take that burden on, the whole
Yes.
county.
Yes.
Why are we not exploring some kind of fee? And I think I've talked to Dave a little bit about this, about short-term rentals,
Yeah.
VRBOs. They're making tons of money. Everybody wants to come to Granbury. Other communities, other states, other counties, they have a plan in place that they pay a one-time fee.
Good idea.
That would be something that could help offset
Becky,
all
that's
the
a good
issues we're
idea.
having.
That's a good idea. But there are other ways that these get paid for, public-private partnerships being a big one. And if the facility is designed, unlike the East plant, in a way for TLAP, it's called a Texas Land Application Permit. That beneficial reuse water, right now, farmers would kill for that. If you Google the fertilizer shortage, and how much we're gonna have to start paying because you can't get fertilizer. The very phosphorus and nitrogen that will kill the fish in Rucker Creek is the very phosphorus and nitrogen and fertilizer that these farmers would love to have. So these other cities are realizing they can make a lot of money. He talked about, call this one or that one, call Temple, Texas, call Round Rock, Texas, call Springtown, where they get it, that we can make money, and so can counties by selling the beneficial, high-quality reuse water. You can't drink it, but you can sell
Can you
it.
sell light pan? Maybe they want it.
Yeah, Dave, I mean, you're kind of putting together a project here, right?
Yeah.
Am I letting something out of the bag that I don't need to be? But I mean, this, kind of working on these details and stuff, that's, I don't,
Well, you
What
understand.
what do you need from me?
well,
Where do you
I mean,
stand up?
I think that, I mean, we're not gonna make a decision that we're gonna spend the money on it
So first
today,
of all,
so I mean,
a
you're.
quick answer to who would operate it, for instance. If the city's current plan falls through to the basement, you do an agreement, a memorandum of understanding or an interlocal agreement with the city and have the city operate. The county just put the facility in. You also have developers pitching in. The infrastructure, I mean, this is a whole nother, I mean, we could spend a whole
Yes, we could.
deal on this deal,
Yep.
so.
Well,
And I
we
haven't
need
looked
to.
into it, I'd be
We
happy
need
to do
to
that.
before the money's put somewhere else, again.
I do want to clarify one question with you, just in case, because you asked that I have to categorize it. Today I don't, but I don't know what the rules are going to be in 90 days when they come out. So,
I just don't want any more emergency. I can't handle another. We gotta do this right now or
as
I can't do that.
far as the rules go today, Commissioner, when I put it in that category that you saw, the little red light that went off for me and Becky to read stated no, but that's as of
But
today.
we got two deadlines as far as I know. We've got December 31st of 2024 to obligate,
Yeah, obligate,
and we got December 31st of 2026 to complete.
correct.
And for instance, with a project, whether it's streets, expansion or
Whatever.
whatever, you can break it into phases where you can be complete by, it doesn't have to, the entire project does not have to be finished if you break it down into components. That's my understanding from Mr. Wojtek.
As of
And-
today, yes, as
Well,
of today.
if you're, anyway.
Yeah.
So
But
we're running a
Yeah.
long meeting.
all I have to do is
Yeah,
make
I
the
say we,
deadlines every 90
We
days.
might beat this up enough, but
Yeah.
I don't wanna cut people off of something, but let's not go over and just rehash everything we talked about. If you get something new, but, you know, we do have tied up a lot of.
And we got another one of these today.
Yeah, we got another one that we're gonna have to,
So what's
Chris,
the
get a
process
break.
from here
we'll
forward?
get a 3 o'clock for a, you wanna come to that one?
Been
Right.
raising her hand for a while.
That'll be good.
I'm changing the subject, if I may.
Yay!
I was just going to ask, I noticed that we have the charitable organizations that we spent money on, and I was just wondering from previous conversations that you were gonna change the format of how you're going to grant money out of the CARES funds that are coming to charitable organizations. Is that correct?
Not decided yet.
Okay.
That will come to Commissioner's Court on how we spend the money, whether it's gonna be charitable organizations, whether it's gonna be a sewer plant. Those decisions have not been made, nor have they been vetted or discussed. Is that correct?
But
Yeah, I agree with
I'm
that.
talking
And
about
I
how
don't-
you,
I don't
how
see
you
it.
I haven't taken anything off the table, me personally, as a
I don't
commissioner.
see it.
First off, we don't even know if we're getting the money for sure. We, you know, we got indications we
Nothing's
are.
been taken off the table.
What I was getting at is how you're going to select the charitable organizations on how you're going to give them the funds.
I'm-
Have you,
I don't think
At
that's even
this
on the
point,
table
I,
yet.
yeah, I don't, yeah, that's,
not
I,
yet?
I think that's kind of a moot point at this point.
What's
I don't
not a
think
moot
that
point
that's-
is there needs to be a somewhat objective and not subjective way to pick how this money goes, and a rubric is what you use. A rubric is where you
Well-
assign points if they meet certain key features that you've agreed are the key to getting the money. And then you have an objective, not a subjective way to go back later. It's like when you hire somebody. I would have 2,000 applicants apply for one job and had to show, why did I pick this one and not that one to avoid getting sued? That rubric is, if you're a veteran, you get 25 more points than anybody else. If you're this, we had that, but I don't see anything except whoever's loudest wins. And I don't want that to include me. Is there a rubric? where
Well,
you
and I think
say,
at this point,
here's how we
we're
pick?
throwing ideas out there. I'd like to see us take some steps at building a bridge. That is,
The bridge is
let's
over.
go down there and see if we can build a bridge behind a dadgum dam and alleviate some of this traffic south of 377 on the west side of the
Guess what,
lake.
that's being looked at now,
That's-
outer south loop. It is being
Yeah,
looked
you
at
know,
with TxDOT.
Yeah.
The corridor is already addressed, and it's been presented to TxDOT.
Do we have to wait on TxDOT? We've got a problem
Unless the
coming.
county's
I
got
don't think
millions
we
and millions of
do.
dollars.
Unless you wanna use county money to do it.
Is it, well, there's
And,
$5 or
get
$6 million right here that we're talking about. Is this, get us
Across
started.
the lake, because that's what, you know, they've got to say on that.
Well, and
Then
like I
how
said,
will
I
you
wanted to throw an
prioritize?
idea out there and see if this is something that's,
Discussion.
you know,
Discussion is whoever's last wins. Prioritization needs a rubric. Which charities, is any going to wastewater? Is any going to a bridge? Is any more going to emergency management? Everybody's got, a discussion doesn't get you to an answer, a point system, assigning a number to what has been established as a priority for the people.
but
Who aren't here.
what do we give a number to? That's what this meeting is about,
well-
is we need to establish the priorities. We need to throw the ideas out there
Yeah,
and
yeah.
say, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's go with that. Or, you know, that's a terrible idea, move on. So I don't think that we can build a rubric until we have the the pieces of what we're looking at to put into the roof.
Well, no,
So-
I think that we can, because I mean, exactly, yeah, you're looking at, you know, I would think that one of the key points would be who benefit, or how many people are most benefited by this particular expenditure.
Sure, and right now, we have, you know, the sewer plant. I just threw out there a bridge.
Yeah, so you have the scope
So
of impact.
what are
We
these,
got
yeah,
we got 69,000 people here in this hood county that rely upon fire departments.
So a
To save
rubric
their
would
lives.
be,
That's important.
a rubric would include the scope of impact, what's the benefit, the severity of need, or the intensity of need, if you will, based on, and then you need some features to base that on, how badly do we need it? And so for each thing, each idea, you assign a point value to what's the scope of impact, what's the ultimate benefit of this? What's the consequence of not putting any money into this?
Again, folks, we're gonna have
They
to,
don't know.
I'll let you one more in, but just to let you know that we're not gonna make an immediate decision.
No.
We hear from our emergency, we've got the time, we've got the money, we don't have to make a decision, the money will be in the pool, and we've got to go through several meetings, discussions with as many people as we can get input from to help us make a decision, because it comes down to this court,
Yes,
and probably not my time, but yours, so you'll be there to make that decision. And that's where it comes, that's what you pay these people for, to make the decision after they get the proper information from the
yes,
public. And then they'll make a decision, and that's what's gonna happen.
yes.
But it's not gonna happen today, so.
No, but a system, to avoid all the heat you've been getting for the decisions that you have made, have a way to show numerically, here's how that priority was determined.
The heat doesn't bother some of
It's
us.
not
And
just-
we make a decision, brother,
It's
whether
just
we make mistakes or
subjective.
not, you have to make a decision, go at the information we had at the time we had it,
Yeah.
the way we got it. It was a decision that had to be made, we couldn't wait, we'd lose it all together.
The number-
We've made that decision.
An
I've
objective
got
and
time for one more,
subjective
Tina.
matters.
Yeah, I got here late, I had something else this
Well,
morning.
good, I'm gonna
So I
close the
don't-
meeting then.
So I don't know what all was said, but has a public survey been suggested?
That's what I suggested.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
I suggested.
Public meeting.
no, a survey,
That's what
a
I've
public
heard, yeah.
survey. It's like, I filled one out not too long ago about what my thoughts are on
Suggested.
a swimming pool. You know, the city put out something about the swimming pool. It's like, could you not put out a survey and find out what is most important? I mean, other than the things you've discussed this morning, and I'll find out what it is later, but other people might have other ideas that are important to y'all, important to everybody that nobody's even thought about, because these things are so important, but maybe there's other things that are also important, maybe a survey
That's what I said
to
earlier.
put
Survey
out.
focus
And
groups.
it can be done over a month's time. I mean, you know, online, on Facebook, on the website, on the newspaper. I mean, those are the way people, especially older people who don't know about the internet, they read the newspaper.
Yeah.
You know, I
Or
mean,
spread the
so
word.
maybe a survey to find out what, and list the things that you have and find out what's most important.
That's important, and it could be on your website, the county commissioner's website, to go to that site, fill out the survey, leave it open-ended for, like you said, things that nobody here mentioned that's important to people, and then put out there how to do the survey, high-tech, low-tech ways to have input.
Well, that's some good input, I think the meeting's been well worth it, but we can't, we're gonna be able to tap the court, and the employees gonna have to get back to work, and we got another one to do this afternoon, but, you know, I don't mean to cut everybody off, but I think we've covered a lot of issues, and we don't need to rehash, but we've got a lot of things to think about, and different ways of doing it, and we appreciate everybody's input.
So is the meeting, what is the meeting at 3 today?
There's a workshop dealing with Tyler Odyssey software that is.
Tyler Technologies,
Yeah,
that.
yes. We're gonna listen to some of the JP clerks about the issues they're having with the transition from NetData to Tyler.
Okay.
So with that, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for all for coming. It was a great meeting. Thanks.